Hey, it's Desiree. I'm going to do a really quick or have a really quick conversation with you today about why smart women end up working so much harder. Because that used to be my story. I used to work my ass into exhaustion and I couldn't understand why I would see other people who, I didn't think were more qualified than I was soaring ahead of me. I couldn't get it. And I also noticed that with clients too. I would see clients show up and they brilliant women, some had PhDs, master's degrees, all kinds of things, had done just the most amazing things in their careers. And yet they would come to me exhausted because they would work and work and work and work, but not see a real shift. In fact, the only real shift that they saw was in their sense of frustration. Like things just got harder and harder. And so they wanted some relief. So I want to share with you why I believe this happens from my own experience and also from watching my clients and helping them and myself shift out of it. One of the things I notice about women who really pride themselves, and I do to some extent still pride myself on being smart, oftentimes we're so in our head. We are so consumed with what we think other people will think of us. Our sense of identity is attached to being smart. So sometimes making mistakes feels like, the end of the world. And so that causes us to struggle unnecessarily. It causes us to work harder than necessary because oftentimes we feel like we have something to prove. We don't really understand how to relax and how to be and how to receive. And so there's a lot of pushing and forcing that happens, which obviously creates exhaustion, right? It will burn you out. It will wear you down. So in order for you to allow yourself to experience the level of success that you want or the next level of success that you desire without so much of the heaviness, without so much of the, what's the word that I'm looking for? Without so much of the hustle, right? The nonstop hustle all of the time, then you really actually need to learn how to get out of your head, right? And allow yourself to receive, allow for mistakes to happen, learn the lesson and move on from them instead of, judging yourself and criticizing yourself and, letting the voice in the back of your head kind of go crazy with that kind of stuff. So it's really important that not that you stop being smart. Hey, Deanna, how are you? Hey, Judith, how are you? Not the, hey, is it Carol? I'm not sure. I think it's Carol. Not that you try not to be smart, but that you learn how to receive more. Like you stop allowing your sense of self and identity to be so wrapped up in, your logic, and your reason and your ability to rationalize things, but you actually learn how to receive. You actually allow help to come in. Another thing that I notice a lot of times when a woman's very smart, sometimes she kind of feels like she has to know all the answers, has to have it all together, especially if she's reached a certain level of business. She kind of feels like, well, I've reached a certain level. It's almost embarrassing to admit that I need help in this area. And I see that happen a lot when a woman's really smart. It's kind of like the defenses go up. There's a lot of puffery sometimes where she just doesn't allow herself to be vulnerable enough to receive the help that she needs to get to the next level with a lot more ease. And so, I really wanted to have this conversation today because, it frustrates me when I see women who are so gifted, they're so talented, they're so skilled at what they do, and yet they're not getting to the next level no matter how hard they work because of these issues. So I'm actually going to invite you guys. Thanks, Deanna. I'm actually going to invite some of you guys to share with me, if you will, some of the things that you have experienced. Like if you know that you are someone who's extremely smart, right? But you haven't allowed yourself to receive at this level, I'd love for you guys to share some of the maybe frustration that you've noticed as a result of it. Because I'd love to be able to help you during this conversation today. Let's see. I'm actually doing this live stream from my phone, which usually I do it from the laptop. So I may not see everyone who is here, but if you would share, that would be great because I think this is a really important topic. I tend to work with women who are powerhouses, women who, have not been able to get the support that they need other places And oftentimes it's because they haven't learned or they haven't been able to let that support in when they were working with other people. And so I provide kind of like a unique combination of both masculine and feminine energy where, I can be very straightforward, very direct, but there's also a very compassionate nature that I offer. So when I'm holding space for someone, it allows them to kind of, basically I can hold their energy, right? Where I know that sometimes when folks are in other environments, they don't feel like the coach or the mentor or whoever it is that they're working with can actually support their energy. And so if that is the case, then oftentimes they can kind of shut down and not understand why they're not moving forward or getting the results that they want. So if you are someone who has strong energy, if you are someone who feels that you're very smart, you're probably have a bunch of degrees or a bunch of accomplishments, right? And yet still not getting to the level that you desire, then now is an opportunity for us to have a quick conversation about, what's going on for you and how we can help you shift past that. Now, if it's something too private, feel free to send me a private message and we can talk about what it would look like to jump on a call. All right. So Deanna says, my biggest fear shows up in the engagement. I connect, then disconnect. I would love to know more about what you mean by that, Deanna. I will share this with you. For a long time, I was really I would create content and great content, by the way. I have to pat myself on the back for that. Great content, but I'd put it out and I didn't get the kind of engagement that I thought. And then I would go into doubt and I would start to question and I would start to think, well, maybe it wasn't good enough. Maybe I needed to do this and maybe I need to do that. It was a lot of obsessive thoughts, trying to get it right because again, I thought I had something to prove. And then when you feel that way, when you attach that kind of negative energy essentially to what you're doing, then it's going to produce the opposite effect that you want. So what I would encourage you to do, Deanna, I think I'm saying it right. What I would encourage you to do is, when you find yourself disconnecting in that moment, you don't want to force down any of the feelings that you have, right? But in that moment, really think about yourself, or think to yourself, why am I feeling this way? What is it that I believe about myself that actually isn't true that is causing me to respond in this way? All right. Because then it gives you an opportunity to find choose a new way to respond in that situation and kind of give yourself a break. Hey, Albert, how are you? All right. So Deanna says, engage, disengage. I seem to be afraid of the client's energy. Oh, that's interesting. So I'm glad you brought that up. It's very interesting because I'm someone who has very strong energy is what I've been told over and over again. And I remember I work with people who also have strong energy. However, for a very long time, I was afraid to work with those clients. I felt intimidated by clients who had energy that was as strong as mine because I didn't really understand my energy. So it's interesting that you say that you're afraid of your client's energy. What I would invite you to, or a way that I would invite you to reframe this is, could it be that the intimidation that you might feel about your client's energy is actually excitement, right? Like if you're someone who, let's say, attracts people who are not at the same energy level as you, but you're kind of used to it because it doesn't challenge you, then the people that you actually want to work with who have a higher energy, it's possible that you might just be excited by their energy. You might think it's intimidation at first, but it's possible that it's actually excitement, because oftentimes what frightens us and what excites us is so close. And if we're not used to it, we may misinterpret what that feeling is. Make sense? All right. So Deanna says, it's what you described. I have strong energy. Yeah. They are put off by your energy, which is very true. That's what I said earlier in this broadcast, is that especially if you're a woman, right? It's very common and it's easily accepted if a man has high energy, but women with high energy, oftentimes it's not welcomed by both men and women. It is seen as intimidating. It is seen as challenging. It's also sometimes seen as difficult. When a woman is very assertive, when a woman knows what she wants, when she can speak her truth, those kind of things, oftentimes a woman is called a bitch. Typically men are not. Typically men are called confident when they come across in that way. So I totally get why, why you feel that people could be put off by your energy, because the truth is they could be put off by your energy. The good news is the people who are put off by your energy are not your people, right? Which means that you need to challenge yourself and actually start going after those clients who do feel a little bit intimidated or intimidating to you right now, because those are the people that you're actually meant to serve. So it's very important. It's great that you have that awareness, right? Because now you get to choose to call in the people that you're really here to work with. You know, this actually goes into something else that women do, especially women with a lot of energy, do all the time, which is playing small, right? We think that because people have been intimidated by our energy, that we then need to lower ourselves or continue to work with clients that we've outgrown, or even hang out with friends that we've outgrown, things like that. And I did that. And I will tell you this, it is such a soul crushing experience to continue to live your life from this really small place, because you are afraid that people will be intimidated by you. And what you actually do is you then become, the best way to say this is your own abuser. Like, you become the person who stuffs you down, who silences your voice, who constantly criticizes you, right? Because you're so desperate to, stay this small little bud and not blossom, because you want to keep certain people around you. It is a very painful way to live a life. All right. I know it from personal experience. And so one of the reasons I love to do what I do is because I help people break free from that. It's just not a good way to live. So I hope this inspires you to know it, to recognize it, and then to choose to do something differently. Hey, Tiffany, how are you? So yeah, it is, right? It is a difficult way to live. So does anyone else have any experiences you want to share in reference to what it's like being a smart woman and not allowing yourself to receive support on the level that you really want to receive it? Like, how has that shown up in your business? How has it shown up in your life to be a challenge for you? Because the more you can get in touch with the pain that it's caused you, the more inspired you will be to make change, right? So it's one thing to be aware of a problem, but you really want to understand the long-term effects of the problem, so that you are then informed to whether or not you want to make a change, right? Because I will tell you, for me, here's a great example. All right, so good. Tiffany, come back and catch the beginning. That would be awesome. Here's a great example. I am now in the process of releasing some extra weight, right? It's totally unrelated, but kind of related. I'm in the process of releasing some extra weight. This is something that I've wanted to do for months. And I started, I got on a program and I lost 10 or 11 pounds. And then I just, went back to my old habits, because I hadn't really thought about the cost of carrying the extra weight. I just thought I would look better. I'd be able to fit into the clothes that I want to fit into. And so I just stopped following, the routine that I had developed, or stopped following the program really, and gained the weight right back. I went to see my father a couple of weeks ago. And it was very interesting, because after I came back, he reached out and he was like, listen, I just want to tell you, he's like, not that you don't carry it well, but you kind of gained a little bit of weight, and I'm only telling you this because I care about you. Right. And when he said it, I totally received it, because I know it's true. I know I've got to drop these pounds. I don't have to, but I desire to. Right. And so it was really awesome that, our relationship is to the point that he felt that he could say that to me, and I received it very well. There was a time in my life when I don't think I was that open, and I didn't even realize it. I think there was a time in my life where I just kind of thought that I knew everything, or I had to know everything. And so I wasn't able to be open enough to receive that kind of feedback, right? And this is important because, oftentimes, we're not even aware. It's not even conscious to us that we're not receiving. Right. And when I talk about receiving, I teach people how to sell higher end programs. So oftentimes I'm talking about receiving money, but this is bigger than that. Right. This is about receiving feedback. Right. This is about receiving love. This is about receiving attention. Right. There's so many different levels on which we have to be able to receive. It's about receiving support. Right. And I know for a fact that there were many times in my life when I was not open enough to receive. And then I would be frustrated that, a situation would get out of hand, and I'd be like, how come no one cared enough to say or point something out to me? And it could have simply been that I wasn't open to receive, right? Maybe that people noticed, but I wasn't open to receive. And I know this sometimes when, I am on the phone with a prospect, or if I am prospecting, and I might say something to the person and they have a difficult time receiving it, right? And it's typically, like I said, women who are very smart, because I attract women who are very smart, very high-powered women who have struggled with receiving for most of their lives. It doesn't mean that you cannot have a successful business. What it means is that you'll typically get to a certain point where your business is not growing at the pace that you would expect it to, because you have this other work that needs to be done. All right? So I hope that was helpful. Okay, so Tiffany says she can relate. What exactly can you relate to? That would be good to know. Hey, Juliana, how are you? Okay, so does anyone else have any questions around this topic? Essentially, basically what I said, if you're just joining me now, you can always go back and catch the replay and how I kind of broke things down in the beginning. But essentially, I'm talking about why smart women tend to work really hard. And it really comes down to not knowing how to receive and, kind of feeling like they have to know everything, feeling like they have to prove their worth. If they ask for questions, if they allow themselves to be vulnerable, it means that, maybe they're not good enough, or maybe they're not smart enough, right? Because their identity is really wrapped up in how smart they are. So they're afraid to make mistakes and all kinds of things. And this is all stuff that I've lived through, which is how I know it. Like all of those things can really cause a person to work much harder than necessary. Oftentimes, it's funny to me. I make really good money in my business, and I'll reach out to somebody at time, or a prospect at times, and they'll respond to me and they'll say, "Oh, well, I'm making X, Y, Z," and typically it's less than what I'm making, and they're working way harder than I'm working, right? And I know the reason for that, right? I know what the reason is. It's because oftentimes, I'll give you another example of a client actually. When she first started working with me, she was making like $2,500 a month. Within, I think, just over a month, she made almost $60,000. And that's a huge shift in income or in revenue. And the reason that happened was, one of the reasons anyway, there was a couple of things that we did, but one of the reasons was because she stopped working as hard as she was working. We actually, a lot of the extra effort she was putting into the work that she was doing every day was coming from a place of guilt, not from need, not because she had to work harder, but because she felt guilty if she didn't work harder, right? This is another thing a lot of times, if you're very smart, this is something that, especially if you're smart and you feel like you're a high achiever, oftentimes when you're not working hard, you do feel guilty. Like, for example, I'm here right now, I don't know if you can see, I'm here right now at the river, right? Like my work is done for today and I'm feeling so chill. I decided to get on the live stream and actually have a conversation with you guys, right? My work is done and I don't know what time it is. It's not even 2:00 yet. I work a couple hours in the day. Actually, no, it's not completely done. I do have a client session this afternoon, but other than that, I'm done. And you can have a very highly successful business this way. But part of being able to do this is allowing it to be easy, not feeling like, I remember for a long time, I felt like if it wasn't difficult, if it wasn't challenging, if it wasn't so fucking hard, that it wasn't worth it. Like I wasn't worth it, right? Like my sense of achievement, the excitement that I got from that came out of really having to struggle to make something work. That's not the case for me today. And Sazu, my online business manager, suggested that I do a live stream, and I probably will do it this week in reference to the difference between being a high achiever and a high performer, because there is a difference. And I had to make the shift from being a high achiever to a high performer because, typically a high achiever is someone who is like, their sense of worth is attached to the accomplishment, the achievement. And if they're not accomplishing and if they're not achieving in that moment or in every moment, they don't feel as worthy, right? When you're a high performer, it's different, right? Like I can feel worthy when I'm just being. I don't have to be doing anything. I don't have to be striving towards something, although I enjoy doing that. But my sense of worth is not attached to the outcome, right? And so, if you're someone who's really smart, if you're someone who's very headstrong, you have really big energy, part of your work, if you want to get to another level in your business, is allowing yourself to not let it have to be so difficult, to allow it to be easy, right? And not resist the fact that it's easy and not try to make it harder when it's really simple, right? So that's another thing I notice when a woman's really smart, oftentimes she's like looking for ways to complicate shit. Almost like breaking it to make, you know what I mean? So that she can go put the pieces back together again, right? This is all stuff that I know I've experienced. It's stuff that I know my clients have experienced and things like that too. So let's see. I'm going to wrap it up in just a second, but let me just see who else has any comments. So Tiffany says, not receiving feedback well. I get easily offended when the feedback is out of love. That's a good one. So I'm glad you shared that, Tiffany. Here's what I would recommend, because, I shared already today that was something that I had a challenge with too. When the feedback comes in, and it's great that you have the awareness, by the way, when the feedback comes in and you feel triggered by it, sit with the trigger, right? If you can, because everything that triggers us, it's a blessing, right? Because it gives us an opportunity to examine where we're still emotionally hooked to something, right? And we want to be able to release the emotion. So when you feel the trigger, just allow yourself to feel the trigger and be grateful for the trigger. And then you can ask yourself, what about this is triggering to me, so that you can start to release the emotional attachment to it. And then the trigger goes away, right? So you don't have to say this publicly, but think about the types of criticism or feedback, I should say, that you receive. What about that feedback triggers you? If you can look for what about it triggers you, and you can allow yourself to feel the emotion, don't stuff it down, and don't distract yourself by doing something else, because oftentimes we try to get busy to distract ourselves and not feel what we feel. Literally sit there and feel the emotion. Let it come up, and it will probably be uncomfortable at first if you're used to stuffing down your emotions, right? But let yourself feel it, and then you can look for what that trigger could be, right? Like, what about the feedback that you're receiving, or why does feedback, maybe even in general, cause you to feel uncomfortable? Right? And that information, if you allow yourself to sit with it, you can then start to release the emotional attachment to it, and you won't be triggered as much. All right. So let's see. Julianne says, I get so much. Oh, you get me so much. All right. Looked at old photos. Why did no one tell me the clothes I was wearing looked awful on me? I was not ready to hear it. Exactly. Right. Oftentimes, we are not where we need to be mentally, spiritually, and emotionally to receive the information that will allow us to get to where we want to be. Hey, Sharina, how are you? So I'm grateful that my dad said that to me. You know what I mean? I was like, thank you. That, to me, that's love. I'm like, thank you so much. And now what do you think I'm doing? It's so easy for me to, well, that's not true. I have had like a couple of days where I got off my routine, but for the most part, I've been eating much healthier. So that was awesome. All right. So Tiffany says, I'm a perfectionist. I've been working on overcoming that. There are still times I don't feel good enough. So I totally get that. You're welcome, Tiffany, by the way. I totally get that. Here's the thing. And it's interesting because I have struggled with the same thing for many, many years. Part of what I do now is just, remind myself every day that I'm good enough. Not only am I good enough, but I'm fucking awesome, right? That's something that I would recommend that you do for yourself as well, Tiffany. I will say this to you also. This thing about being a perfectionist, it's related to what I shared earlier about having your identity attached to being smart or being right. Oftentimes, if your identity is attached to a particular outcome, if your sense of worth is attached to that, then you will strive to be a perfectionist because you're constantly trying to kind of fill this void. If you can learn how to shift, and obviously it's beyond the scope of today's live stream to share that with you, but I'd be happy to talk to you if you want to send me a private message. If you can learn how to shift your sense of worth from what you do to just who you are, right? Then that will not only allow you to stop with this whole perfectionist nonsense, but it will allow you to finally experience the mental and the emotional freedom that I'm sure you crave, because that's what most of us are craving. I help my clients make a lot of money, but it's so much bigger than money. That's what I love about my work. It's about so much more than money. It's about you loving all of who you are, flaws and all, right? That is something that it took me so long to really get within myself. And it's interesting that I'm sharing this conversation about being smart, right? And why smart women often, work really hard. Here's the conflict that I struggled with for a long time. I pride myself on being really smart. And at the same time, I didn't think I was smart enough. It was like, it was such a weird, you know what I mean, combination, but whatever. And there are times when, you know, my negative self-talk will still come up, and, you know, I'll say, oh yeah, you're not that smart. But I have the awareness to catch it in the moment, and then I can release that, because I know that's bullshit, right? I know that I'm pretty smart, you know, but I also am not attached to being smart like I used to be. And so I don't strive to be a perfectionist anymore. You know, the other day I reached out to someone via email, and I sent them a link to one of my landing pages, and there was a typo on it. And she sent me a message letting me know there was a typo. I was like, okay, thank you, right? In the past, I would have been mortified. I would have felt like, oh my God, so unprofessional, and continued to beat myself up, and I wouldn't have been able to move forward, right? And this is another thing about, you know, women like you and I. It's important that we stop beating ourselves up, because there is so much value that we have to offer to people. But if we're beating ourselves up, if we're constantly in doubt, if we're constantly judging ourselves, if we're constantly pushing ourselves down, then we cannot connect with the people who actually need us, right? So if I had allowed the fact that I, you know, screwed up the use of, what do you call it? Like basically I just screwed up the spelling, let's just put it that way. If I had allowed that to stop me, then I wouldn't be here sharing this live stream with you. I wouldn't be able to help my clients make $50,000 and $100,000 a month. I wouldn't be able to, you know, be available for anyone else who's in my world who is inspired by what I share, right? It's the same thing for you. I wouldn't be able to make the contribution that I can make. You guys can't make the contribution that you can make if you are the ones who are constantly beating yourselves up, right? So it's very important that you're able to take the feedback that you receive, be thankful for it, and move the fuck on, right? Don't use it as an opportunity to make yourself wrong, which is something that we do so frequently. So, you know, it's a pattern that we have. So it's something that you just have to work on breaking the pattern every day, right? That's what you got to do. All right. So, okay. Juliana, I have just allowed myself to be smart. I dimmed it down for so many years. It's okay for me to show my intelligence. Abso-fucking-lutely. I'm so grateful for you and excited for you. So that's awesome. All right, cool, guys. If any of you would like some support with growing your business, reach out to me, send me a private message. I have a program that starts in 2 weeks. It's a group program, and it's really about helping you do a couple of things. Number one, own your value so you can sell much higher end programs. And you can also leverage these programs. So if you're someone who doesn't want to work with, you know, dozens or hundreds of clients at a time, you can still leverage in the way that I teach. That still allows you to work with clients in a very intimate way, but then also make sure that your business isn't requiring you to work so many hours that you don't have quality of life, that you don't get to spend time with the people that you love. I'm also going to show you how to do marketing that actually converts, as well as sales conversations that not only convert for you, but also set your clients up for success even before they start the program. So it's a really cool opportunity for us to work together. So if that's something that you're interested in, send me a private message and I can let you know more about it, and we can hop on a phone call about it if you're interested. And that's all for today. I hope you guys got a lot of value out of what I shared. I would like to do more of these where, you know, I'm sharing my thoughts with you and also getting you guys to participate in the conversation. I think that's really of high value. So glad you were here. If you have any questions, again, send me a private message. And until we speak again, I hope you're up to big, bold things in your life and in your business. Take care.